Alright, let's go. Number 10. The umbrella. On September 7, 1978, a Bulgarian dissident named Georgy Markov was waiting at a bus stop on Waterloo Bridge in London. He felt a sharp sting in the back of his right thigh. He turned to see a man picking up an umbrella from the ground. The man apologized and walked away. Markov boarded the bus. That evening, he developed a fever. By the following day, he was hospitalized. On September 11, 4 days after the incident on the bridge, Georgy Markov died. He was 49 years old. The post-mortem examination found a platinum pellet embedded in his thigh approximately 4 millimeters in diameter, with 2 small cavities drilled into it. The cavities had contained a substance that had since dissolved into the body. Toxicologists at Porton Down, the British Defense Research Facility, eventually identified the substance as ricin, a biological toxin derived from castor beans with no known antidote. The pellet had been fired from a modified umbrella, a weapon that used compressed gas to discharge the pellet with enough force to penetrate skin, but not enough to cause immediate pain or awareness. The weapon had been developed by the KGB's Technical Operations Department and supplied to Bulgarian state security, the DS, which was operating under direct Soviet intelligence supervision. The assassination had been ordered by the Bulgarian government with KGB facilitation. But here is where the Markov assassination significance extends beyond its own forensic detail. Western counterintelligence had no prior knowledge of ricin delivery weapons in this configuration. The pellet's discovery was the result of a meticulous search conducted only because Markov, before losing consciousness, had reported the umbrella incident and connected it to his deterioration. Had he not reported it, or had the pellet not been recovered, the death would almost certainly have been attributed to natural causes. The weapon worked on the assumption that the victim would not survive long enough to provide a coherent account. Markov did. The method was identified. Every other target who encountered a similar weapon without reporting it is not in any record. Number 9. Thallium. Thallium is a soft metallic element that occurs naturally in trace amounts in the environment. It is odorless, tasteless, and colorless in its soluble salt form. It can be absorbed through the skin, ingested in food or drink, or inhaled. Its initial symptoms, fatigue, nausea, hair loss, beginning approximately 2 weeks after exposure, are indistinguishable from a range of natural conditions, including stress, thyroid disorders, and radiation exposure. Death, when it occurs, typically follows neurological deterioration across weeks. The KGB's use of thallium as an assassination and incapacitation tool was documented in the cases of multiple Soviet defectors and dissidents who developed symptoms consistent with thallium poisoning after contact with Soviet intelligence operatives. In several cases, the victims survived with permanent neurological damage. Attribution was complicated by the delay between exposure and symptom onset, the difficulty of detecting thallium in routine blood panels, and the range of natural conditions that produce similar symptom profiles. Western forensic medicine did not routinely screen for thallium in unexplained neurological deterioration cases until Soviet-era poisoning methods became more widely documented through defector testimony in the 1990s. But here is where thallium as an intelligence tool reveals something about the KGB's operational philosophy that the individual cases do not convey. The most lethal poison is not always the optimal tool for an intelligence service. A tool that kills slowly, that produces symptoms attributable to natural illness, and that degrades the target's professional credibility by making them appear ill, confused, or unstable. Before killing them was operationally superior in specific contexts. A defector who appears to be suffering a mental breakdown is easier to discredit than one who is obviously murdered. Thallium killed the person and the credibility simultaneously. The cases where this was the method are documented. The cases where it was the method and went undetected are not. Number 8. The suitcase. In 1957, KGB officer Bogdan Stashinsky was provided with a specialized weapon by the KGB's Technical Operations Department and tasked with the assassination of Ukrainian nationalist leader Lev Rebet in Munich. The weapon was a tube-shaped device that, when pressed against the face of a target and triggered, discharged a spray of prussic acid, hydrogen cyanide in liquid form, directly into the target's respiratory system. The discharge dissipated immediately. The compound absorbed into the bloodstream within seconds. The cardiac arrest that followed appeared at autopsy, consistent with a natural coronary event. Rebet died on a Munich staircase. The autopsy found no evidence of external intervention. The death was recorded as a heart attack. 2 years later, Stashinsky used the same weapon against Ukrainian nationalist leader Stepan Bandera. The method was identical. The result was identical. Bandera died on the stairs of his Munich apartment building. The death was recorded as accidental poisoning, a conclusion that was subsequently revised. Stashinsky's existence, his methods, and his weapons were disclosed only because he defected to West German authorities in 1961. He confessed, described the weapons, and was tried. He was convicted. He served 4 years. But here is where Stashinsky's case changes what is knowable about the death records of Soviet-era émigré communities in Western Europe. The KGB did not build weapons that disguised assassination as heart attack for 2 uses, and then retire the capability. Stashinsky disclosed 2 targets. The Technical Operations Department's files were not among the material he had access to. The number of natural-appearing deaths in émigré communities in West Germany, France, the United Kingdom, and the United States during the same period, and the proportion of those that may have been KGB operations, has no complete accounting. The 2 known deaths are documented. The unknown ones are registered as natural causes in municipal death records across Western Europe. Number 7. Polonium. On November 1st, 2006, Alexander Litvinenko, a former FSB officer and KGB successor service defector, met with 2 Russian contacts at a London hotel. He drank tea. He developed acute symptoms within hours. He was admitted to hospital, deteriorated rapidly, and died on November 23rd. The diagnosis took weeks to arrive. Litvinenko's symptoms, bone marrow failure, hair loss, organ shutdown, were consistent with radiation sickness, but the radiation source could not be initially identified because standard screening equipment does not detect the specific isotope responsible. The eventual diagnosis was polonium-210 poisoning, the first confirmed case of deliberate polonium poisoning in recorded medical history. Polonium-210 is an alpha emitter. Alpha radiation does not penetrate the body from the outside. It is stopped by skin. It is therefore undetectable by external radiation monitors. It is lethal only when ingested, inhaled, or introduced into the bloodstream. It cannot be detected without specialized equipment calibrated to the specific isotope. It leaves no visible trace on a surface. It decays relatively rapidly, meaning forensic evidence degrades over time. The British government's subsequent inquiry concluded that Litvinenko was deliberately poisoned with polonium-210, and that the operation was probably approved at senior levels of the Russian state. But here is where the polonium method reveals the specific category of assassination weapon the FSB was developing 20 years after the end of the Cold War. The weapon was not chosen for speed or certainty. Polonium-210 takes weeks to kill and requires the target to ingest or inhale a meaningful quantity, which introduces operational complications. It was chosen because it was designed to be undetectable by any forensic system routinely applied in a Western hospital. The diagnosis was made because of the extraordinary effort of specialists who had been specifically briefed on the case and who knew what to look for. In a case without those specialists, in a hospital that did not escalate to radiation specialists, Litvinenko would have died of an undiagnosed illness, and the cause would have remained unknown. The method was specifically engineered for the assumption that Western forensic medicine would not find it. It almost worked. Number 6. Novichok. On March 4, 2018, Sergei Skripal, a former Russian military intelligence officer who had spied for British intelligence, was found unconscious on a park bench in Salisbury, England. His daughter Yulia, who had been visiting, was found unconscious beside him. A detective who attended the scene was subsequently hospitalized. A member of the public who came into contact with a discarded perfume bottle containing the substance died weeks later. The substance was Novichok, a class of nerve agents developed by the Soviet Union under a classified program designated Foliant, whose existence was unknown to Western intelligence until Vil Mirzayanov, a Soviet chemist who had worked on the program, disclosed it in 1992. Novichok agents are organophosphate compounds that inhibit the enzyme acetylcholinesterase, causing the nervous system to lose the ability to regulate muscle function. They are estimated to be 5 to 10 times more potent than VX, the most powerful nerve agent previously known to Western weapons programs. The British government's investigation concluded with high confidence that Russia was responsible. Russia denied involvement, but here is where the Salisbury poisoning reveals the most specific operational intelligence failure in this list. Novichok's existence had been disclosed publicly in 1992. The Foliant program's basic parameters, that the Soviet Union had developed a new class of nerve agents significantly more powerful than anything in Western programs, had been in the unclassified record for 26 years by the time Novichok was used on a park bench in England. Western intelligence had 26 years of public disclosure and classified research to develop detection protocols, treatment protocols, and forensic identification methods for a substance whose existence was confirmed and documented. The Salisbury response demonstrated that the preparation had been insufficient. The detective who attended the scene was not equipped to recognize nerve agent exposure. The public member who found the discarded bottle was not protected. The method worked on assumptions about Western preparedness that proved accurate. Number 5. The car crash. The KGB's operational files, partially accessed through Soviet-era archives, opened briefly after 1991 before being reclassified, contain references to a category of assassination designated mokroye delo, literally wet work, that included the staging of traffic fatalities as a standard tool for the elimination of targets, where the political cost of an obvious assassination was deemed too high. The method required operational assets with access to the target's routine, their travel patterns, their vehicle, their regular routes. The most direct version involved mechanical interference with the target's vehicle, brake lines, steering components, combined with positioning to ensure the failure occurred at a location and speed that would produce a fatal outcome. More sophisticated versions involved a collision staged by a second vehicle. The KGB's internal training materials on mokroye delo, fragments of which were accessed by researchers after 1991, described vehicle operations as one of the most difficult wet work methods to attribute because the physical evidence of mechanical interference degrades or is destroyed in the crash itself, and because traffic fatalities are among the most common causes of sudden death in any country. But here is where the staged traffic fatality is the most operationally invisible method in the KGB's documented arsenal. Unlike poison, which leaves a biological trace, or a shooting, which leaves ballistic evidence, a car crash in which the mechanical interference was competently executed leaves evidence that is intrinsically destroyed by the event it produces. The brake line that was cut is in the wreckage. The wreckage burns. The investigation finds mechanical failure and records driver error or equipment malfunction. The number of KGB wet work operations conducted through vehicle staging is not documented in any available archive. The number classified as accidents in the traffic fatality records of Western countries is not knowable from the outside. Number 4. The letter. In 1978, Bulgarian dissident Vladimir Kostov opened a piece of mail in Paris and noticed a small package that had been included with the correspondence. The package had a small protruding component. he contacted French authorities. Examination of the package revealed a mechanism designed to inject a ricin pellet, the same design used in the Markov umbrella assassination 4 months later, into the hand of the person opening the mail. The device failed to fully discharge. Kostov survived. The pellet was recovered. It was identified as identical in construction to the pellet later found in Markov's thigh. The mail delivery mechanism established that the KGB's Technical Operations Department had developed ricin pellet delivery systems in at least 2 configurations: contact injection through a directed device and mail-based injection through a package mechanism, and had deployed both within a 4-month period in 1978. But here is where the Kostov package changes what is knowable about the mail delivery method's operational history. Kostov survived because the device malfunctioned. The malfunction was identifiable because the delivery mechanism was visible and the package was unusual enough to prompt caution. A competently constructed mail delivery ricin device that did not malfunction, delivered to a target who opened it without suspicion, would produce a death from apparent sudden illness within days. No autopsy performed without specific knowledge of the ricin pellet delivery system would identify the cause. The Kostov device failed. The Markov device did not. The proportion of successful deployments to failed ones is not in any available record. Number 3. The injection. The KGB's Technical Operations Department maintained an ongoing research program into substances that could be delivered by hypodermic injection in a brief physical contact, a handshake, a crowded elevator, a staged collision in a public space, that would produce fatal outcomes indistinguishable from natural causes after an interval sufficient to establish distance between the administration and the death. The department's research, partially described in the testimony of defectors, including KGB chemist Boris Goltsov, included compounds derived from naturally occurring toxins that triggered cardiac or neurological events and metabolized rapidly enough to be undetectable in standard post-mortem toxicology panels. The existence of these compounds was confirmed through defector testimony, but the specific chemical formulations were not fully disclosed. Western forensic toxicology in the Cold War period was calibrated to detect the substances it had reason to screen for. A compound specifically designed to fall outside routine screening panels would, by definition, not appear in a standard autopsy toxicology report. But here's where this category of KGB capability is the most durable, unsolved question in Cold War assassination history. The defector testimonies confirm the research program existed. They confirm compounds were developed. They confirm the operational intent was to produce deaths that would not be attributed to assassination. They do not provide a complete list of deployments, targets, or outcomes. Every sudden cardiac death in a Soviet-era émigré community, every unexplained neurological event in a dissident, every rapid death in a Western intelligence asset. Each is a candidate that cannot be confirmed or ruled out without knowing the specific formulation that was used and having a forensic sample sufficient for targeted analysis. The research program existed. Its complete operational record did not survive the Soviet Union's collapse in a form accessible to Western investigators. Number 2. Directed energy. Beginning in the late 1970s and accelerating through the 1980s, CIA personnel assigned to the American Embassy in Moscow began reporting symptoms of an unusual and consistent pattern: headaches, sleep disruption, cognitive difficulties, and what some described as a pressure sensation in the head during specific periods of time at specific locations within the embassy complex. American intelligence eventually determined that the embassy was being subjected to directed microwave radiation, a pulsed electromagnetic beam directed at the building from a Soviet source. The program was internally designated TUMS, for the Unknown Moscow Signal, and later became known in the open literature as the Moscow Signal. The purpose of the Moscow Signal remains disputed. One interpretation is that it was a technical collection operation using the microwave beam to activate resonant devices implanted in embassy materials to collect audio. Another interpretation, supported by some of the medical evidence, is that the radiation was calibrated to produce neurological effects in personnel: disorientation, cognitive impairment, reduced analytical capacity, as a means of degrading the embassy's intelligence function without producing deaths that would require acknowledgement. The State Department conducted a medical study of affected personnel. The study's conclusions were classified. Declassified summaries indicated elevated rates of certain health conditions among long-term Moscow embassy staff. But here is where the Moscow signal produces its most specific, unresolved implication. If the Soviet program included a component designed to produce physiological effects in personnel, and if those effects were calibrated to appear as stress-related health deterioration rather than external intervention, then the career-ending health crises of multiple CIA officers assigned to Moscow during the period are not separable from the program's possible effects. Without access to classified medical records and the original Soviet technical specifications, several officers whose effectiveness was significantly reduced during Moscow assignments attributed their condition to stress. The alternative attribution has never been formally confirmed or ruled out. Number 1. The methods that were never found. Every method on this list was identified because something went wrong for the operation that deployed it. The Markov umbrella was identified because Markov survived long enough to report the incident. The Salisbury Novichok was identified because the victims survived and specialists were available. The Stashinsky Prussic acid device was identified because Stashinsky defected and confessed. The Kostov mail device was identified because it malfunctioned. The KGB's Technical Operations Department did not develop these methods for the cases where they were identified. It developed them for the cases where they were not. The department's research program was continuous across the Cold War period. It produced methods specifically designed to defeat the forensic and investigative capabilities of Western counterintelligence. The methods that were identified share a common characteristic. They were identified through an operational failure, a survivor, a defection, a device malfunction, a forensic advance that the designers had not anticipated. The methods that were not identified share a different characteristic. They left nothing in the record except a death classified as natural, an illness attributed to stress, an accident recorded without suspicion. But here is where the Technical Operations Department's program produces its most durable implication for the historical record. The department was operational from the late 1950s through the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Its successor programs continued under the FSB and SVR. The Litvinenko case in 2006 and the Salisbury case in 2018 demonstrate that the capability continued to be developed and deployed in the post-Soviet period. The Salisbury attack used a compound from a Soviet-era program whose existence had been public for 26 years, deployed in a configuration that Western forensic response was not adequately prepared for. The methods on this list were found because the operations that used them failed in some specific identifiable way. The operations that did not fail are in no list anywhere. They are in the death records of émigré communities, the medical files of former intelligence officers, the accident reports of police departments in a dozen countries, and the obituaries of people whose names appear nowhere in any intelligence archive. The KGB did not publicize its successes. It publicized nothing. If you want to see more videos like this, click the video on screen now and make sure to subscribe.